So the real estate sector we see is gaining a lot of traction and are getting a lot of attention since that announcement from the MBS that there's going to be that the real estate sector has overtaken the oil and gas sector as the third largest in the country. After that rebase, the rebase number, obviously, we're still waiting for it. It was supposed to be out by the last day in January, but we're yet to get those rebased GDP and CPI, and hopefully we will get it, but we'll stay on that conversation, and hopefully the NBS will give us those rebased numbers very soon. But the thing now is we see the real estate sector is getting a lot of attention. So we hear a lot of conversations around that, and you heard that this morning. Bit of a good news there, no matter how small, for us to celebrate that developers or some developers are turning to locally produced materials, building materials. We know what that can do to our naira, and we hope that it is sustained. Now, the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Mr. Ahmed Dangiwa, is looking at using that real estate sector for foreign investors and is asking them to seize the vast opportunities within Nigeria's housing sector, particularly through the federal government's renewed Hope Cities and Estates program. But how realistic is this when we look at what we face as Nigerians living in Nigeria? Well, let's speak through the eye of real estate developer Bright Okereke, right here in the studio. Hi, Bright, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, so we see here that the minister is talking about attracting foreign investors. And of course, one would ask, are we done with the domestic or the local investors? How realistic is it that we would be able to attract FPIs into the real estate sector?
I think it can work because it's a very profitable sector. It's something that has grown really fast. As you said, it has overtaken oil and gas. And the oil and gas industry gets a lot of foreign investors involved in it. So if it's already bigger than oil and gas, then it has the potential to bring in foreign investors and make it very profitable for them too.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just saying it. We know that there are opportunities for more houses. Our housing gap is more than 22 million and all of that. But the reality on ground is we still have a lot of imports in that sector, which reduces profitability. We still have a lot of paperwork. People still complain of, going through the paperwork, the bureaucracy and all of that. So, and these are the things that investors look out for.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's not going to happen immediately or at once. It's something that's going to take time from one step to another, then another, before we get to a point where most of these issues and hurdles have been completely eliminated. But at the current moment, what most investors look at is how much money can I make from it? And already as a developer, I'm telling you, the people who are already investing with us are making good money out of it. And it's something that if foreign investors come in, they can also share part of it. And then with time,
but would you say we are on the right path? I mean, I hardly hear conversations around taking care of the bureaucracy that follows buying of lands and getting the papers. We don't talk a whole lot about that these days.
The truth, we don't. And it's something that needs to be organized and it has to be arranged, even for building, to get approvals, for certain types of building, especially the type that we need in the country, which is bigger buildings with more units because of the housing crisis we're currently going through. One of the things I usually say is Nigeria should look at the housing market similar to that of New York, where we have a lot of big buildings because the land size, especially in Lagos, is small compared to the population. So when we have bigger buildings with more units, it's going to help a lot. And the conversation around the bureaucracy, around getting the documentation and every other thing around it needs to be talked, and it's not being talked about enough. But it's similar with other countries too. Like if you look at the US, if you go through the documents to buy a property there, it's still a lot. But one of the things that usually push people to look beyond bureaucracy is profitability.
And they say you guys are doing a lot of profiteering.
Yes,
The
yeah.
developers.
So if there's profit, then there's a reason to want to go through that. So the only thing that most times affect the profit is usually inflation. And if the government can stabilize that a little with the local production of materials and other things like that to make it a lot easier for us to sustain ourselves, it will go a long way to attract foreign investors because the profitability will be what the bureaucracy involved in it.
Yeah, but for you as a developer,
Yeah.
how much of those locally produced building materials do you adopt into your construction? Let's start from there.
So a lot of times we do use local materials, but
Like what and
like irons now. There's local iron and foreign iron. Many times we do go for the foreign one because the quality is a lot higher. But there are certain materials like cement. Most of the cement are locally produced from Dangote or Biwe or some of those companies. And
what about wires? I learned we have a lot of
wires?
cables
Yes,
and wire.
for wires, Nigerian produced wires have higher reputation than foreign ones. So most of the time we go for locally produced ones. And then things like the only fittings are the ones that still are imported mostly. But when it comes to the building structure, we have enough locally produced ones to be able to sustain buildings.
So, but how much of that do you adopt, or do you base it on the requests of the clients, or how much the client is willing to pay?
It's a little bit of both because local produced ones are cheaper. But the issue we have is most times when you tell a client that you buy the locally produced one, they seem to have lower confidence in it because they feel like if it's from Nigeria, it's not that good, which is not the case. So what we do is we do a little bit of both. We get some of them locally produced and a lot of them from importation.
So it does seem like we have the message to preach that it's Nigerian made doesn't mean it's low quality.
Yes, we do have that message because a lot of people are convinced that once it's Nigerian made, that the quality is not that good.
But we have mortgage, primary and secondary, federal mortgage, and all of it. But funding is still a major one for house ownership.
Yeah.
What do you see in the future now that real estate sector is getting bigger and bigger?
It's going to get tougher because one of the things I preach excessively is the fact that the amount of houses we are building does not meet the demand. So the industry is going to
It doesn't meet the demand, but we have a lot of unoccupied houses.
I think the numbers of unoccupied houses are being slightly exaggerated because the unoccupied houses are usually in the luxury areas, right? So it's the luxury areas where you see unoccupied houses. But when you come to where the middle class actually live, you don't see a lot of those. Like for instance, where we mostly build our project on the mainland, which is like Surulere, Yaba. While we are still building, we have people renting it. So they rent off plan. So sometimes you not even roof the house. You have people coming around and asking you, how much are you renting? So things like that is going to make the industry a lot more competitive. And the thing with mortgage currently in the country is the cost and the timeline of most mortgages, if you meet a commercial bank, is not quite conducive. Most times we've looked for a lot of mortgage partners to work with. And one thing I noticed is a lot of them that are like 3 years mortgage, 5 years mortgage. And to me, I'm like, that is just a payment plan. That's not a mortgage. And because of that, we don't get a lot of people being able to pay long-term payment, 20 years, 30 years, except the few government subsidized areas where you can get that. So once that can be fixed,
but
we'll have a lot of
subsidized
adoptions.
government, how many people can access it?
Very few, because the requirements are very strict and they are just for a certain group of people. And if it can be a lot more open, similar to car loans, there's one thing I've noticed that car loans are becoming a lot more common because of certain organizations that are making it a lot more open. So if they can open it the way car loans is now open to most people, we would have a lot more adoption of people getting houses with good rates and be able to own houses and pay over a long time, 20, 30 years.
So if you were to recommend, where would this change start from?
If I were to recommend, I would say government should look at how to partner with private institutions a lot more.
Would that be banks or developers?
So it will be banks, a little bit
but
with
you know,
banks for
still have
financing.
to deal with interest rates.
Yes.
Regulated by the CBN.
Yes. So
I mean,
it has to be a little bit of banks and a little bit, not the commercial banks, because one of the things I've noticed with commercial banks is when governments go through them, most of these things are not very accessible. Like there was a time I saw a business loan opportunity, that was like many years ago, on CBN website. And then they're like, oh, send it to commercial banks. I read to commercial banks, and everybody kept acting like you don't know what I'm talking about. So, and when one person finally admitted, the person was like, hey, you need a property in Yaba that you own. And I'm like, it's a small business loan. If I own a property valued 100 million, I'm no longer a small business. I have good money. So it will be a little bit of partnership with banks, but the right kind of bank, maybe mortgage banks or special purpose banks, or and then directly with developers. So when you partner directly with developers, you can make it a lot more stable. Developers build with funds from the government, finish building, then the people buying pay the government back. So schemes like that will go a long way to
Yeah,
make
but
it easier.
since our minister is looking for foreign investments, perhaps we should call the foreigners to come and do that for us. You think?
I think there is a part where I think the people in diaspora have been playing a very major role in the real estate industry. And I think if we make it a lot more convenient for them, we'll get a lot more funding from that than straight.
When you say convenience, what do you mean?
Convenient. Most times they have issues moving the money from the country they are in to Nigeria. Another major issue they have is also payment plans and things like that, so that they will just be funding it slowly. So they have a lot more capital because of the currency difference of the country they are in versus Nigeria. So if we can find a way to partner more with them, we would have a lot more of them investing in Nigeria and also getting guarantees. Because one of the things that they have challenges with is government changing policies too fast that it now affects their investments. So if they can get guarantees from government and stable enough government that say, okay, once you put your money in, your money is safe, a lot more of them will put in way more money than we'll probably see from the foreign investors we're looking at.
So I guess we should reach out again to the Minister of Housing and Urban Development.
Yes.
And yes, we can get from diaspora remittances, but they also need some more assurance,
Exactly.
that their investment is safe and there'll be no policy somersaults and all of that. Thank you so much
Thank you very
for
much.
your time this afternoon. Right, Okereke, real estate developer.
Thank you very much.